They say a secret is only dangerous when it is discovered. But she knew better. A secret becomes dangerous the moment it is born, because from that moment, it starts whispering. Whispering in the silence of the night, in the spaces between words, in the shadows cast by the people closest to you. And her secret was already screaming. The affair hadn't started like a fire. It began like a match, strike small, fragile, flickering. A smile too long. A touch too close. A laugh that lingered in her chest long after it should have faded. Her lover was not supposed to matter. He was supposed to be an escape hatch, a distraction from the cage she called marriage. But the longer she tasted freedom in his arms, the more she realized how suffocating the cage had always been. Her husband had never been cruel in the obvious ways. No bruises, no shouting matches to prove her suffering. He was controlled. Polite. Commanding in the way a storm commands the sea without needing to raise its voice. And that was the problem. Because when the storm turns its gaze on you, there's no shelter left. The night it all began to unravel, she made the mistake of underestimating him. They were in the bedroom, silence heavy as a second skin. She sat at the vanity, brushing her hair with trembling hands, avoiding his reflection in the mirror. He stood behind her, calm, unhurried, watching her as though she were prey he had already caught. "You think I don't see it?" he said finally, voice quiet, almost gentle. Her chest tightened. "See what?" "The way you look at him. The way he looks at you." The brush stilled in her hand. For a heartbeat, she thought of denial. But then she remembered his eyes, the way they always sliced through lies. Her voice faltered. "It's nothing." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Nothing doesn't make your pulse race. Nothing doesn't make you smile when you think I'm not looking." Her throat closed. "You belong to me," he whispered, his tone smooth as silk, sharp as glass. "And if he forgets that, I'll remind him." Her heart seized. She turned, eyes wide, her voice breaking. "Don't. Please. Don't hurt him." The smile that curved his lips chilled her to the bone. "That depends on you." The next day, she met her lover in the quiet corner of a cafe. The weight of her husband's warning pressed down on her shoulders, making every stolen glance feel like a noose tightening. "He knows," she whispered, voice trembling. Her lover froze. "Knows what?" "About us." Panic flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by defiance. "Let him. What can he do?" She gripped his hand across the table, desperation spilling out of her. "You don't understand. He's not like other men. He doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. He plans." But her lover only shook his head, squeezing her fingers. "Then we'll plan too. We'll run, if we have to." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But she could already hear her husband's voice in her mind, "You belong to me." That night, her husband returned home later than usual. His shirt was immaculate, his hair perfectly in place, but his eyes carried a glint she had never seen before. He kissed her cheek, sat at the dinner table, and asked about her day as if nothing was wrong. But when she reached for the serving spoon, she noticed it. A speck of blood on his cuff. Her hand froze. He followed her gaze, then smiled faintly, casually rolling up his sleeve as though it were nothing. But she knew. Oh, God, she knew. Sleep evaded her that night. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every whisper of wind against the window sounded like her husband's voice. "You belong to me." When she finally drifted into restless dreams, they were filled with her lover's face broken, bloodied, eyes wide with betrayal. She woke with tears streaking her cheeks, her husband's arm heavy across her waist, holding her in place like a shackle. The affair had been intoxicating, a rebellion against the life that suffocated her. Now it was a death sentence. And she was caught between two men, one who offered love that was fragile and doomed, and one who offered control that was terrifying and absolute. But the choice wasn't hers anymore. Because her husband had already made it for her. They say guilt is invisible. But she could feel hers like fingerprints smudged across every surface, every silence, every glance. It clung to her like smoke seeping into her skin, into her clothes, into the very air around her. And he could smell it. Her husband. Always watching. Always waiting. It began at the dinner table. She sat across from him, her hands trembling as she ladled curry into his bowl. The clink of the spoon against porcelain felt louder than thunder in the silence between them. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply watched her, eyes calm, steady, as though cataloging every flicker of guilt that crossed her face. Finally, he spoke, voice low and smooth. "You're distracted." Her throat tightened. "Just tired." He smiled faintly, taking a slow sip of water. Tired women don't blush when their phone buzzes. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't realized her phone tucked discreetly under the napkin on her lap had lit up. Her lover. She quickly silenced it, forcing a brittle laugh. "It's nothing." A spam message. His gaze lingered a moment too long before he set his glass down. Of course. He didn't press further. He never pressed. He let the silence do the pressing for him. And it was crushing her. Later that night, when he went to shower, she checked her phone with frantic hands. A single message blinked back at her, "Are you safe?" Her heart twisted. Her lover was trying, reaching through the growing shadows to pull her out. She typed quickly, fingers shaking, "He knows. Please be careful." The reply came instantly, "Then leave him. Tonight. Come with me." Her chest tightened, hope and terror colliding in equal measure. She could almost see the escape, the freedom, the clean break. But then she heard the bathroom door creak open, steam curling into the bedroom, and her husband's silhouette filled the doorway. She shoved the phone under the pillow, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. And in that moment, she knew. She would never get out clean. The next day, she met her lover again, this time in the dim safety of a rented room above a shuttered shop. He paced the floor, fists clenched. "We can't keep doing this. He's dangerous. I see it in your eyes every time you come here." Tears threatened to spill, but she swallowed them down. "You don't understand. He doesn't just suspect. He knows. And once he decides to act." Her lover stopped pacing, grabbing her shoulders, his voice fierce. "Then we'll run. Tonight, tomorrow, I don't care when. I'll protect you." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But protection meant nothing against the man she'd married. Because her husband wasn't just strong. He was calculated. He was patient. And patience was the deadliest weapon of all. That evening, she returned home to find her husband already waiting. The lights were low, dinner already served. Candles flickered on the table. Her heart stuttered. He only lit candles on anniversaries. He smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "For us." She obeyed, hands clammy, pulse racing. He poured her wine, his voice calm. "You've seemed distant. I thought we should reconnect." She forced a nod, throat dry. "Of course." He studied her across the table, eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Tell me something. When you're with me, do you think of anyone else?" The wine glass trembled in her hand. "No." The smile that curved his lips was razor thin. "Good." He raised his glass. "To honesty." The toast felt like a blade pressed to her throat. She couldn't sleep. She lay beside him, rigid, staring at the ceiling while his arm draped heavy across her waist. Her phone, hidden beneath the mattress, buzzed once, twice. She didn't dare move. Because she knew he was awake too. She could feel it in the way his breathing never truly deepened, the way his hand flexed against her side as if reminding her, warning her. "You belong to me." Her lover's words from earlier echoed in her head. "We'll run. I'll protect you." But her husband's silence was louder. And she knew sooner or later that silence would break. And when it did, it would destroy everything. The next morning, she stared at her reflection in the mirror, brushing her hair with mechanical motions. The woman staring back looked like a stranger. Hollow-eyed. Fragile. Splintered. "You're breaking," her reflection whispered. She almost believed it had spoken. And maybe it had. Because that's what he wanted. Not just to catch her. Not just to punish her. But to break her slowly, methodically until she no longer remembered what freedom felt like. And the terrifying part was, it was working. They say predators don't chase out of hunger. They chase to remind the prey who owns the ground they walk on. And now, every step she took felt like it was on his ground. The first sign came at dusk. She was leaving the small cafe where she used to meet her lover, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The street was empty, but the silence pressed in heavy. Her lover had insisted they stop meeting in public. Too risky. Too visible. But it was already too late. Because she felt its eyes on her, the quiet hum of a presence she couldn't name. Her husband's presence. Even when he wasn't there, he was. When she told her lover, he laughed bitterly. "Let him follow me," he said, pacing the room they now hid in. "I won't run from him." But she could see the fear in his hands, the way they clenched and unclenched. She reached for him, voice breaking. "You don't understand. He doesn't fight like other men. He won't confront you in the open. He'll bleed you out slowly, until you don't even know how it started." Her lover cupped her face, defiant but trembling. "Then we have to leave. Tonight." She shook her head violently. "If we leave now, he'll know. And once he knows for certain." Her voice trailed off, but the image was clear. The end. That night at home, her husband sat reading in his chair, the lamplight soft against his face. She watched him from the doorway, her stomach twisted into knots. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Finally, without glancing up, he spoke. "Do you think he loves you?" Her chest seized. She tried to mask the panic in her voice. "Who?" He closed the book with deliberate care, setting it aside. His eyes finally met hers, dark and unreadable. "The man who thinks he can take what's mine." Her throat closed, words caught like glass shards. He smiled faintly. "Love is fragile. Fear is permanent. Which do you think will last longer?" Her blood ran cold. It wasn't physical. Not yet. It was a phone call. Her lover's car vandalized. Tires slashed. Windows shattered. Nothing stolen, just ruined. The police called it random. He called it intimidation. And she didn't need to ask. She already knew who had done it. Because her husband's smile that night at dinner was too sharp, too satisfied. Days blurred into weeks, every hour suffocated by tension. Her lover grew more frantic, more desperate. He begged her to run. To choose. But choice had become an illusion. She belonged to her husband's game now. And he was tightening the net, strand by strand. She saw it in the little things, the way her husband checked the locks twice at night, the way he scanned her phone with a casual glance, the way he never raised his voice. Control without noise. Power without effort. She was a bird in a cage whose door had never been closed, yet somehow she could not fly. One night she dreamed of her lover. He was running through a dark forest, branches clawing at his skin, breath ragged. She was behind him, reaching, screaming for him to stop. But then the shadows moved. The trees bent. And there, at the edge of the path, her husband stood waiting. Not chasing. Not rushing. Just waiting. Her lover ran straight into his arms. And the forest swallowed them whole. She woke screaming, her husband's hand instantly covering her mouth. His whisper was calm, steady. "Shoo. You're safe." But his eyes in the dark said otherwise. The next day, her lover didn't show up. Not at the cafe. Not at the rented room. Not anywhere. Her messages went unanswered. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at her chest as she sat alone, trembling. Had he finally left? Or had her husband already made his move? When she returned home that evening, her husband was waiting at the table again, wine poured, dinner served. "Long day?" he asked casually, eyes glinting in the soft light. She tried to answer, but her throat was too dry. He raised his glass in a toast. To endings. And she knew whatever had happened, whatever would happen, her lover's time was running out. Because the hunt was no longer in progress. The hunt was almost over. They say you only realize the weight of silence when it shatters. For her, it shattered with a phone call. It was past midnight when the phone rang, shrill and sharp, piercing the stillness of the house. She sat up in bed instantly, her heart already pounding before she even touched the receiver. "Mrs." the voice said, formal, heavy. It was a doctor. "You need to come. It's urgent. He's been admitted. His condition is unstable." Her stomach dropped into ice. She whispered a broken thank you, hung up, and sat frozen on the edge of the bed. Beside her, the husband stirred. Not startled. Not confused. Simply awake, as though he had been waiting. "Go," he murmured, his voice low, calm. "Say goodbye." Her throat closed. The words were too precise. Too knowing. But she obeyed. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead, casting everything in a washed-out pallor. She rushed down the corridor, every step heavy with dread. When she entered the room, her breath caught. There he was, her lover. But not the man she remembered. Not the one who had laughed with her in secret corners or held her like she was the only thing in the world. Now, he looked smaller. Fragile. Skin ashen, lips cracked. Machines beeped weakly at his side, as though counting down to something inevitable. She clasped his hand, tears spilling unchecked. "I'm here. Please, please don't leave me." His eyelids fluttered, his voice a mere shadow. "You, already, chose." The words broke her, hollowed her from the inside. "No," she sobbed, shaking her head violently. "I didn't. I was trapped. But his chest hitched, once, twice. The monitor stuttered. Then a single, endless tone filled the air. The nurse rushed in. The doctor followed. Voices barked orders. Hands moved quickly. But she felt none of it. She was gone. Hollow. Because he was gone. And she had killed him. Not with her hands, but with her silence. She stumbled out of the room, collapsing against the cold white wall of the corridor. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her tears blinding. Behind her, the doctor approached quietly. His voice was calm, practiced, but weighted. "I'm sorry. We did everything we could." Her head snapped up, her voice a broken whisper. "How? How did this happen?" He was healthy. He was strong. The doctor hesitated, then lowered his tone. "Some things don't add up. His decline was too sudden, too severe. We'll need to review." "But," he trailed off, eyes soft with pity. She knew what he wasn't saying. He was telling her without telling her. It hadn't been chance. It had been done. When she returned home, the inspector was waiting. He stood in the doorway, cap in hand, eyes shadowed with something between pity and suspicion. "I heard what happened," he said gently. "I'm sorry. But I need you to understand, this isn't over. If you know something Ganithingia must tell me." Her husband appeared in the hallway, calm as ever, offering the inspector tea as though nothing unusual had transpired. Their eyes locked, predator and watchdog. The inspector turned back to her, his gaze searching. "You don't have to live like this. If you ever find your courage, you know where to find me." Her lips parted, words struggling to form. But then her husband's hand settled lightly on her shoulder, warm and heavy. And the words died in her throat. The inspector's eyes dimmed. He adjusted his cap, gave a short nod, and walked away. That night, the husband laid a stack of papers on the table. Insurance. His voice was quiet, almost tender. You'll be taken care of. Always. She stared at the black ink, the promises of wealth and permanence. But the words looked like blood. Her hand shook as she traced them, bile rising in her throat. And still, a part of her whispered relief. Because it meant she no longer had to choose. The choice had already been made. Later, she stood before the mirror again. Her face was pale, eyes swollen from weeping, but behind her reflection, something else lingered. You see it now, the reflection whispered, lips curving into a smile she did not make. Her voice cracked. See what? That he owns you. That you'll never leave. Her breath hitched. No. The reflection tilted its head, gaze sharp as glass. Then why do you feel lighter? Why does the silence finally feel peaceful? Her knees buckled. She clutched the sink, trembling. And deep down, she knew the answer. Her lover was gone. Her cage was sealed. And she had stopped fighting the chains. They say grief carves a hole. But hers wasn't a clean wound. It was jagged, infected, dripping guilt that no amount of tears could wash away. And standing in the middle of that hollow space was him, her husband. Watching. Waiting. Filling it with chains she had stopped fighting. After the funeral, the house became unbearably quiet. No phone buzzing with secret messages. No hurried excuses for late-night outings. No soft laughter in hidden corners. Only silence. But silence wasn't empty. It was full of his presence. The husband moved through the house like a shadow, calm and steady. He didn't gloat. He didn't rage. He simply existed, filling every space she had once shared with someone else. And it suffocated her. One evening, she found him sitting in his favorite chair, a book resting unopened in his lap. The lamplight painted him in warm tones, as though he were nothing more than an ordinary man ending an ordinary day. But his eyes gave him away. They weren't reading eyes. They were watching eyes. You're quiet, he said finally, voice even. Her hands twisted in her lap. There's nothing to say. He leaned forward slightly. There's always something to say. Especially when someone you cared for is gone. Her breath hitched. He smiled faintly, tilting his head. Unless you're relieved. Her stomach turned. She wanted to scream at him, deny it, throw the lamp across the room. But deep down, in the darkest corners of her heart, a flicker of relief was there. And he knew it. At night, she dreamt of her lover. But not the way he had been. Not warm, alive, defiant. She saw him pale, broken, reaching for her with trembling fingers. His lips moved soundlessly, eyes filled with accusation. Every time she reached back, chains pulled her arms down. Heavy. Unbreakable. When she woke, her husband's arm was draped across her waist, his breathing calm and steady. And she realized the truth. Her chains weren't in the dream. They were real. One morning, she returned to the mirror. Her reflection stared back with red-rimmed eyes, lips cracked from crying. But behind the exhaustion, something else lurked. A strange stillness. You're adjusting, the reflection whispered. Her breath caught. No. You are. He's hollowed you out. And now he's filling you with himself. Tears blurred her vision. I don't want this. The reflection tilted its head, smiling faintly. Then why are you breathing easier now? She stumbled back, shaking her head violently. But the whisper clung to her skin. She was lighter. Not freer, never freer. Just lighter. Because she no longer carried the burden of choice. The inspector came back once, weeks later. He stood at the doorway, his cap tucked under his arm, eyes searching hers. "I wanted to check on you," he said gently. "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And your silence, it worries me." Her husband appeared at her side, hand resting lightly against her back. His voice was calm, polite. "We appreciate your concern, Inspector. But we're doing just fine." The inspector's gaze hardened. He looked at her directly. "If you ever want to speak, truly speak, you know where to find me." Her lips parted. For a fleeting moment, she almost said it. Almost spilled everything. But the hand at her back pressed ever so slightly, anchoring her in place. And she said nothing. The inspector's shoulders slumped. He gave a short nod, turned, and left. She closed the door softly, her chest aching with unshed words. And her husband kissed her temple, whispering, "Good girl." That night, she sat at the table staring at the insurance papers again. Her husband placed a pen beside them, his gaze steady. "All you need to do is sign. It will make everything easier." She stared at the line where her signature should go. The black ink blurred through her tears. This wasn't a choice. It was a performance. A ritual. And she was the sacrifice. Her hand moved, slow and trembling, but it moved. The pen touched paper. Her name took shape. And with every letter, she felt herself slipping further away. That night, as she lay in bed, she realized something terrifying. The grief hadn't destroyed her. It had carved her out. And her husband was filling the hollow with himself. Every smile. Every whisper. Every heavy touch at night. He was becoming her heir. And though she wanted to choke on it, she couldn't. Because breathing him in was easier than fighting him off. And so she lay there, eyes open in the dark, knowing the truth. She wasn't just broken. She was being remade. In his image. They said time dulled pain. For her, time sharpened it. Every day, every hour, every minute became another reminder of what had been lost and of what now controlled her life. The house felt smaller, not because its walls had changed, but because his shadow stretched into every corner. And the most terrifying part was that part of her was learning to live inside that shadow. It began with corrections. Small, precise adjustments to her words when outsiders visited. If she spoke of the past, his gaze would tighten, and she would quickly shift her phrasing. If she faltered, he would squeeze her hand in warning. Soon, she no longer needed the warnings. She rehearsed her sentences in her head before speaking them aloud. She began correcting herself before he could. And that was when she realized she was becoming fluent in his language. One rainy afternoon, she found an old photograph tucked inside a drawer, her lover's smile, frozen in time, his arm draped around her shoulder. Her throat closed as she traced the edges of his face with trembling fingers. The floor creaked behind her. She spun around. He was there. Her husband stood silently in the doorway, eyes fixed on the photograph. His face betrayed nothing, but his stillness was heavier than rage. Slowly, she set the photo down. Her voice was barely audible. "I should throw it away." He stepped forward, took the picture from her, and stared at it for a long time. Then he slipped it into his pocket. "No," he murmured. "You should remember what happens when you forget who you belong to." She didn't see the photograph again. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, she swore she heard the faint tear of paper in the next room. They hosted a dinner for colleagues. The table gleamed with polished silver, candles flickering softly, laughter filling the air. To anyone watching, they were the perfect couple, her smile gentle, his arm draped casually across her chair. But under the table, his fingers pressed against her thigh, firm, controlling. Each time she stumbled in conversation, his grip tightened. Each time she spoke too freely, he dug his nails in just enough to remind her. By the end of the evening, her skin was bruised beneath her dress, though no one saw. And when the last guest left, he leaned close to her ear and whispered, "See how easy it is when you follow my rhythm?" She nodded, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. And that night, she hated herself for admitting, even silently, that it was easier. Her memories began to blur. She would think back to stolen kisses, to laughter shared in shadows, to promises whispered in the dark. But then his voice, her husband's voice, would thread into those recollections, unraveling them. Did he really love you? Or did you only think he did? Did he ever protect you? Or did he only put you in danger? Did you choose him, or did you choose me by surviving him? The questions burrowed into her. And slowly, when she closed her eyes, the face of her lover seemed less certain. The warmth less vivid. The sound of his voice more distant. As if her husband was rewriting her past word by word, memory by memory. Until the truth itself became slippery. One day, the inspector returned. His expression was harder this time, his eyes scanning her face like a man searching for cracks in stone. There are inconsistencies, he said quietly. Things that don't add up. People don't just fall the way he did. Not with the evidence we found. Her pulse quickened. The husband appeared beside her, calm as ever. Conspiracy theories don't suit you, Inspector. The inspector ignored him. His gaze held hers. I know you're not free. I can see it. If you want out, I'll help you. Her lips parted, words trembling at the edge of release. But then her husband's hand found hers. Warm. Anchoring. Dangerous. Her voice betrayed her. I'm fine. The inspector's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked between them. And for a moment, she thought he might drag her out by force. But instead, he exhaled heavily, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. She wanted to run after him, scream the truth into his ear, beg him not to give up. But she didn't move. Because her husband's grip wouldn't let her. The mirror became her confessional. Each morning, she stood before it, searching for fragments of herself that hadn't yet been erased. But the reflection no longer mocked her. It pitted her. You're almost gone, it whispered. He's not just breaking you. He's remaking you. Her throat burned. Then why do I still feel him? Why do I still miss him? The reflection smiled faintly. Because you haven't been fully rewritten yet. And that smile, her own smile staring back at her, was more terrifying than any chain. At night, when he touched her, she stopped resisting. Not because she wanted it. Not because she surrendered. But because resistance had become useless. Her body lay still, pliant, as he moved against her. And somewhere deep inside, she convinced herself this was survival. But a darker voice whispered, this is transformation. When he collapsed beside her, satisfied, she stared into the darkness, wide awake. And realized she no longer knew where she ended and he began. One evening, he asked her quietly, do you still think of him? Her breath caught. She wanted to scream yes, to spit the truth in his face, to carve her defiance into the walls of the house. But she heard herself whisper, no. And he smiled, satisfied. The terrifying thing was she wasn't sure it was a lie anymore. Because the more she denied it, the less she remembered what him had felt like at all. By the end of that month, she realized something chilling. The grief no longer consumed her. The guilt no longer gnawed at her. The memories no longer burned her. Because they weren't hers anymore. He had rewritten them, piece by piece, until her story was no longer her own. And when she looked in the mirror now, she didn't just see herself. She saw his creation. A wife rebuilt. A lover erased. And a hollow filled. They said survival was victory. But she no longer believed that. Survival had cost her something greater than death. It had cost her herself. And as she sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the man across from her, the husband who had rewritten her life, she realized the person she used to be had already vanished. The walls no longer felt like walls. They felt like skin, stretched taut, enclosing her. Every photograph, every polished surface, every carefully arranged ornament spoke in his voice. You are mine. You will stay. You already chose. Sometimes she wondered if the house had absorbed him, or if he had absorbed the house. Either way, there was no corner left untouched by his presence. She tried, once, to remember the sound of her lover's laughter. But all she heard was static. She tried to recall the warmth of his hand against her back. But all she felt was cold. When she closed her eyes, his face flickered like a candle about to die. A shape without features, a whisper without words. And the more she tried to hold on, the faster he slipped away. Until she wondered if he had ever existed at all. Or if her husband had invented him in her mind, only to erase him later. She waited for the inspector to return. Every knock at the door sent her heart racing, hoping it would be him, come to drag her out, come to break the chains. But the door never opened to his face again. Perhaps he had been silenced. Perhaps he had given up. Or perhaps he had realized what she now knew: some cages are built so carefully, escape is no longer possible. One evening, her husband poured them both glasses of wine. He raised his glass to her, smiling as though they were an ordinary couple celebrating an ordinary night. "To us," he said softly. She lifted her glass with trembling hands, forcing a smile. "To us." The wine slid down her throat like blood. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't just repeating his words. She was beginning to believe them. She returned to the mirror one final time. Her reflection stared back at her, calm and unbroken. The shadows under her eyes were gone. The tension in her jaw had eased. She looked like a woman at peace. But the peace wasn't hers. It was his. Her lips moved. She didn't recognize her own voice. "This is who I am now." The reflection nodded. "Yes. You're no longer hollow. You're full." Tears stung her eyes. "Full of him." The reflection smiled faintly. "Is there a difference anymore?" She raised a hand to the glass, fingertips brushing the cold surface. And for the first time, the reflection did not feel like hers. It felt like his. That night, she didn't flinch when he touched her. She didn't retreat inside her head. She let him. Not because she wanted to. But because resistance required memory, and memory was gone. What remained was acceptance. And in that acceptance, a terrible stillness spread through her chest. Not peace. Not love. Just the absence of fight. Weeks later, neighbors commented on how radiant she looked, how calm, how devoted. She laughed at their compliments, the sound smooth and practiced. They didn't see the truth that the woman they spoke to no longer existed. The lover had been erased. The wife had been rewritten. And in her place stood a creation molded by control, sustained by silence, perfected by fear. When she closed the door behind the neighbors, her husband pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You see? You're happier this way." She nodded. And somewhere deep inside, so deep she could no longer reach, a last remnant of her old self flickered once, weak and desperate. But then it vanished. And she became what he had always wanted, his. Entirely his.